This is game number 4 from Prep Test 53. This is a fairly difficult hybrid game that has both sequencing and grouping elements. We have 6 main variables, M, N, O, P, S, and T, that we're putting into 3 groups, F, G, and H. But we're also sequencing those groups. We're sequencing F, G, and H into 1, 2, and 3. And by extension, we're then sequencing M, N, O, P, S, and T as well. And that's what makes this game so difficult, is we have to keep track of both what groups our variables are in and also the sequence of those groups. The way we handle that is with a diagram similar to the one that we have here, where we have F, G, and H being sequenced at the bottom. And so if we found out that, say, group F was in position 1, we could just put F right here in position 1. But M, N, O, P, S, and T are being sequenced up top here in these top 2 layers. And it doesn't matter whether M is in the top or bottom, or any of these variables are in the top or bottom layer of these top 2 rows. All that matters is that we know what group they're in and the position of that group. So if we found out that N was in group F, we could just put N right here in group F. And now we also know that because F is in position 1, that N is also in position 1 by extension. So the benefits of this is that it allows us to keep track of our sequencing, and we know the sequence of F, G, and H, or we're allowed to visually represent the sequencing of F, G, and H, and then M, N, O, P, S, and T, while also noting which groups our variables are in. So let's go through our rules. Our first rule says that S is on group G, or S is in group G. So we're just going to note S and G together in a box, because that's how it's going to look on our diagram, that G is going to be in one of these positions, and then S is going to be right above it. Our next rule says that T is in position 2. So we're just going to write T subscript 2 here, and we're also just going to put T directly into position number 2. Our third rule says that M and P are not in the same group. So this is a classic kind of splitter scenario in grouping, where we found that M and P cannot be in the same group together. And we're going to represent that by putting M and P in a box and then just putting a slash through that box to represent that it cannot happen. M and P cannot be in the same group and therefore cannot be in the same position. Our next rule says that P is before N. And of course, in this situation, we get to make our basic sequencing inferences that P cannot be in group 3 and N cannot be in group 1. But we can see how this would easily combine with our previous rule. Say we found out that M was in either group 1 or 2. Then we would know that P would have to be in the other group because P is excluded from group 3. So if we found out that, say, M was in group 1, well, guess where P is going to go? P is going to automatically have to be in group 2. So we can see how these rules could easily combine. Our last rule says that G is before H. And notice that these are our groups that we're ordering now. These aren't just our variables, we're ordering our groups. And this right here, this is a very restrictive rule. And this is something that you really want to pick up on, is if we only have 3 variables, in this case we do, we only have 3 groups, F, G, and H, and we learn that one must be in front of the other one, that really limits the sequencing possibilities. And it limits it a lot more than you might first realize. So let's consider for a moment, what are the possibilities of FGH? What are the sequences they can be in? Well, first of all, we could put G into 1. And if G's in 1, then we can either have FH, or we can have G in HF. And that's it. There's no other, there are no other possibilities with G being in front. Okay, well, what if G's in second? What happens then? Well, if G's in second, well, then H has to come after it, which only leaves one spot for F, and that's in front. And that's it, because G can't be in last. So G can't be in third position. So G's only going to be in 1 or 2, and this is the full range of possibilities of G being in 1 and 2, which means this is the full range of all possible worlds. We either have GFH, GHF, or FGH, and those are all the sequences. So in a game like this, where the hardest part of the game is keeping track of what our group sequences are and what our variable sequences are, and having to do both grouping and sequencing all at once, if we can simplify the game, then we're going to make this a lot easier on ourselves, and that's an investment worth making. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and write these 3 sequences out in 3 separate diagrams. And then we no longer have to worry about this rule. And then we no longer have to worry about the potential sequences of F, G, and H. We'll have them all before us. So here are 3 diagrams that we now have. One with GHF, one with GFH, and one with FGH. So now we try to get to put as much information on these diagrams as possible. Our first rule says that S is in group G. Well, that is easy now. We can just put S right into group G for each of our diagrams. So now this row, our top row, S and G, that's handled. We have T on 2. We have G before H. The only rules that we now need to worry about are M and P not being together, and P has to be before N. So take a look here at our bottom diagram, the one where we have F, G, H. Well, in this situation, we know that, just look at this row here, that P has to be before N. Well, there's not a lot of options here. P is gonna have to go in group 1, and N is gonna have to go in group 3 because group 2 is completely taken up. So let's just go ahead and put them there. And that only leaves M and O as variables remaining. Well, let's look at our other rule. M and P can't be together. So we know that M can't be with P, which means that M cannot be in group F in position 1. M can't go here. So the only position where M is going to be allowed is in group 3, which only leaves O remaining for position 1. So this work was done. This diagram is complete. There's nothing left for us to place. So now we just have to worry about these 2 remaining diagrams. And in these 2 diagrams, really, it's a lot simpler than you might think because we still only have these 2 rules. M and P can't be together, and P has to be before N. We also don't have to worry about M, N, O, and P as our remaining variables because S and T are placed. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get rid of S and T. I'm going to get rid of all these other rules that we've already put down. And now all we have to worry about is M, N, O, P, and our 2 rules remaining on our 3 diagrams. And this makes this game a lot simpler, a lot easier to deal with. And at the end of the day, this is going to be a lot more efficient as we go through our questions. And although we took a little bit longer with our setup, I think what you'll find is that we can make up that time and then some when we go through the questions. So question 1 is just an acceptability question. So we're just going to go rule by rule here. And let's just start with that T has to be in position 2. And we can just immediately see that answer A just violates that and A is out. So our next rule says that S is in group G. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how can we possibly use this? Because this question doesn't list out our group names. We only have positions 1, 2, and 3 listed out. And we just have M and O, P, S, and T. So this rule is not something that I can use. Well, we can use this rule to eliminate answer choices because we also know that G has to be before H, which means that G can only be in positions 1 or 2. And that means, of course, that S can only be in positions 1 or 2. So if we see S in position 3, then we know something has gone wrong because S has to be in group G, and group G must be in positions 1 or 2. And if you look at answer D, that's exactly what we see. We see S in group 3, which means that answer D must be wrong. Our next rule says that M and P cannot be in the same group. So if we see M and P together, we know that we have a wrong answer choice. And that's answer B. Answer B has M and P together, and therefore B must be wrong. And our last rule says that P must be before N. So let's just take a look at answers C and E and make sure that they both have P before N. And as it turns out, C does not. C has N in position 1 and P in position 2, and therefore C is incorrect, leaving E as our answer. Our next question, question 19, says that if P is in group H, then what could be true? So what we're going to do here is we're just going to put P into group H for each of our diagrams and see what happens. Immediately, you should be noticing that we can't do that down here. P is not in group H, so we know this is not the diagram that we'll be using for this question. So that leaves us with these 2 remaining diagrams. So let's look here at GFH. Well, we see that here we have H in position 3. Well, we can't put P into H in this diagram because P is not allowed into position 3 because P must be before N. And if we put P into position 3, there would be no room for N. So this can't be our diagram either. So we can't be in this one. We can't be in this world. So the only world remaining is this up top. So we have to have P here in group H in position 2. That only leaves position 3 for N. So now we know that P is in 2, N is in 3. Well, who's remaining? Who's left over? Well, we only have M and O remaining as variables. And they have to go on 1 and 3. So that's everything. That's everything that we have before us. Because our rule about M and P being together just doesn't apply here. Because P and T are together in position 2, so that's never going to come up. That's not something we have to worry about. So let's take a look at our answer choices and see what could be true. Answer A says that O is in position 1. Well, that's possible. That is possible. It's right there. That's enough. But just for good measure, let's take a look at our other answer choices. B says that P is in position 1. Well, that can't be true. C says that M is in second place. Well, again, that can't be true. M has to be even in either 1 or 3 because position 2 is full with P and T. Answer D says that N is in position 2. Once again, that can't be true. And answer E says that S is in position 2. Well, that also cannot be. S must be in position 1. Question 20 asks, if O is in position 2, then what could be true? Well, once again, we just immediately know that our third diagram down here, our third world, just cannot be used because here we have O in position 1. So this leaves only our top 2 diagrams. So let's put O in position 2 in each of these diagrams and see what happens. And of course, in both cases, well, what do we get? We've taken up position 2 completely. So let's go to our 2 rules and see what that would imply. Well, my eyes first go to P before N. So we know now that P has to be in position 1. N is going to have to be in position 3, and that's for both of these diagrams because there's just nowhere else for these variables to go. So we have to put P into position 1 to leave room for N to go after it. And in both cases, that just leaves M remaining in position 3. So our question asks us what could be true. Answer A says M is in group G. Well, no. In neither one of these scenarios can M be in group G. B says that N is in group F. Well, N can indeed be in group F. Not in both diagrams, but in this one, we do have N in group F. And therefore, since that is one of our 2 possible scenarios, we know that B could be true. But just for good measure, let's go through our other answer choices. C says that O is in group G. Well, no. O has to be either an F in this diagram or H in this one. D says that P is in group H. Well, P has to be in G here, and G here, so no, it can't be in H. P actually has to be in group G under this question. E says that T is in group G. Well, no, because T has to be in position 2, and in both of these scenarios, G has to be in position 1, so T will never be in group G. Question 21 says, if P and T are in the same group, so if P and T are together, if P and T are in the same group, then for how many of our variables, that's M and O, P, S, and T, can we determine what position their team places in? So we want to know the position of each of M, N, O, P, S, and T, and we want to count up how many of these variables we can place definitively with certainty. So, okay, so if P and T are together, well, we know that that would have to be group 2 because T has to be in group 2. So let's just put P into group 2, and of course, once again, this eliminates this third diagram, or third world here, because P has to be with O in this world. So we know we're in either one of these 2 top worlds. So let's take a look at our rules. Well, M and P together, that's not going to come up because P's with T. So we don't even have to worry about this rule under this question. So the only rule what we care about now is P before N. Well, of course, that's going to put N into position 3. So we're just going to put N in position 3 for both of our diagrams. Well, who's left over? M and O. We have no rules left, so we have no way to determine whether M and O are going to be in positions 1 or position 2. Now notice here for both of these worlds, for both of our diagrams, we have S, P, N, and T in the exact same positions. So we know that S is going to be in position 1. We know that P and T are in position 2. We know that N is going to be in position 3 because that's the case no matter which possible diagram we go with. And this is all possible worlds. This is everything that's possible. So no matter what we do, no matter what happens, S, P, T, and N will be in these assigned positions, in these locked positions. For how many variables do we know what their position is? Well, that's 4. S, P, T, and N. We know these 4, but we don't know M and O. And of course, that is answer C. Answer C says 4, and therefore we can just circle it and move on. Question 22 says that if M is before H, then what could be true? Well, once again, following the pattern of this game, we can eliminate this last world. We know that this is not the case. So we have to be in one of these two scenarios. So let's consider what that would mean for both. For our top one here, that means that M has to be in position 1, because there's just nowhere else for M to go. Because H here is in position 2, so in order to put M before H, we have to put M here. Down here in our second world, we don't know whether M is in position 1 or whether M is in position 2. Both are possible. So let's focus on our top one for a moment and consider our rules. Well, M and P together is just not going to come up because M is with S. So we still have to figure out, though, P before N. We have to sequence those, which means that P is going to have to be in position 2 in order to have N after it, leaving position 3 for N. And we only have one spot remaining, so O here is going to have to go in position 3. So let's go down to our bottom, or our second world. So we know that M is going to be in either position 1 or position 2. So M cannot be in 3. We also know that P is going to have to be before N. So P has to be in 1 or 2 as well, because P can't be in 3. So by definition, if you're not in 3 in this game, then you are in either position 1 or you're in position 2. Well, we only have 2 remaining spots open in positions 1 and 2. We know that M is going to be in one of them. We know that P is going to be in one of them. So we know that M and P are essentially trading off here in positions 1 and positions 2. Now, we don't really have any way of telling which one goes where, but we do know that one of them is going to be in 1 and one of them is going to be in 2. Well, what does that mean for our other variables, N and O? Well, that means N and O are going to have to go here in position 3, which means that in both of our scenarios, we have N and O in position 3. So we're being asked here what could be true. Well, A says F is in position 1. Well, that cannot be the case. That would be our bottom world here, and we've already established that that cannot be true. B says that G is in position 2. Well, once again, that can't be the case. That would be our bottom world here, and that just cannot happen in this scenario. C says that N is in position 2. Well, we just established that N has to be in position 3, so C must also be incorrect. D says that O is in position 1. Well, O also has to be in position 3, so D must be incorrect. And now we'll look at E. E says that P is in position 1. Well, that is possible under one of our worlds. It's not possible here, but it is possible here because we don't know the placement of M and P. P could be in position 1 here, and therefore E could be true and is our answer choice. And our final question, question 23, says that S could be in the same group of each of our answer choices, of each of the following except. So this is essentially a cannot be true question. S cannot be on a team with which of the following. And our answer choices here are M, N, O, P, and T. So let's just go through process of elimination. Well, hopefully the first thing you look at is say, oh, well, S can be with T. We know that because we already solved that for our final diagram down here. So we can just eliminate E just right off the bat. And if you look at our previous work, our previous questions, which we haven't saved for this video, but hopefully you have saved on your piece of paper, on your test paper, we'll see that M, O, and P are all possibilities to go with S. That we've actually written out scenarios previously where we have M, O, and P with S. But if that's not something that you either have available or that you immediately thought to do, then what you can do here is you can just make the inference of saying, oh, we know who S is with in our final one. We know that's taken care of. So in order for S to be with another variable, S would have to be in position 1. So if S is in position 1, well guess who can't be in position 1? N. Because N has a leader. So N can't go here, which means that S can never be with N because S can't be with N here, and otherwise S would have to be in position 1, and therefore B is our correct answer.